For today's critical thought, we're going to be talking about horror design and how developers have tended to struggle with balancing combat and the horror or terror side of their games. And we'll have some game footage up in a few minutes, which if you probably noticed the thumbnail, you can guess what that game is. But since the days of the original horror games, stuff like Alone in the Dark and the original Resident Evil, developers have tended to struggle with the balance of fear and power when it comes to a survival or action horror experience. And many developers will tend to push things to one of two extremes. You either have games that will outright remove all combat, again, stuff like Five Nights at Freddy's, Outlast, and the slew of indie games, or you have games that will either actively or passively encourage combat, stuff like Alan Wake, Dead Space, Resident Evil 5 and 6, and so on. And both cases tend to have issues when it comes to balancing horror in their designs. For the ones that outright remove it, the problem is that if you remove the fight aspect of fight or flight, it renders any sense of terror kind of a moot point. Because I know that the second I get caught, why should I do anything? I have no options to defend myself. Let me just reload the save and go from there. Also, it's very unrealistic in any situation that you wouldn't be able to just pick up, who knows, whatever's randomly around you and hit whatever's coming at you with it. And the problem, and what many developers will argue for this point, is that if you allow combat to be an option, especially a powerful one, then it creates or removes tension and horror. And that's the issue with the games that tend to focus on horror, or on action, or outright encourage it. Whether it's by allowing easy ways to kill enemies, plentiful ammo drops, multiple weapon types, and so on and so forth. The problem is twofold. One is that if you're able to kill everything, then why should you be scared? In Dead Space, I can just walk around using shotguns and rail guns and you name it, and what's the point? If I can also just actively kill everything, it also means that that is going to be pretty much leaving these areas plain. So I can just kill everything in an area, and then what's left to stay in my way? And you'll notice this in a lot of horror-inclined titles, that the beginning of these games are going to be very hard. If I'm just using a knife or a small pistol, what am I going to do to defend myself? But the second I get a powerful weapon, or almost like a tier 2 weapon, the terror is gone. In Resident Evil 7, you watch my play on Madhouse or anyone who speedran it, you can see just how different that game is once you get enhanced handgun ammo, and more specifically when you get the tier 2 shotgun. At that point, you are basically able to handle just about every enemy outside of bosses relatively easy for the most part. And that's not good. Because the problem with keeping horror is that I need to be able to defend myself, but defense and offense can walk a very thin line. Because if I get a weapon that can defend myself very easily, then why don't I just use that to kill these enemies? And that is typically the issue we have. But when it comes to games that manage to handle it, or at least mitigate that issue, it's about introducing different tiers of enemies. A really good example that I don't have footage of yet is Alien Isolation. But let's go to some game footage, and we'll talk a bit more about that next. Alright, so this is footage from our Resident Evil 1 Remastered play. And I have a few parts somewhat queued up. But obviously with the original Resident Evil, it's the most adventure part of the Resident Evil franchise. And with the Remastered Edition, they had to figure out a way to make combat more interesting. And to do that, they introduced the idea of a Crimson Head. Now, what you're going to see right here, I'm going to pause for a second, is that, as with the original Resident Evil, you can kill zombies. You can shoot them, you can stab them, you can blow their brains out with a magnum, or what you're going to see in a second with a shotgun. But, if you can't destroy the zombie, as you're going to see right here, boom, then what's going to happen is that the corpses, well, the second corpses, I should say, stay in the environment. And what happens is if you leave that body down for too long, it will eventually rise as a Crimson Head. The Crimson Head zombies are faster, they do more damage, and they're able to soak up a lot more damage compared to their contemporaries. And the only ways to kill them, or other than the shotgun or other means, is to light their bodies on fire. If you saw my inventory or my spot for a second there, I had lighter fluid. And you have to combine that with the lighter in order to burn them. But there's a limit of how much you can have or how much I will spawn in a general playthrough. And there's always going to be more zombies than you have lighter fluid. So when that happens, I did a little juke there. It presents a very interesting case and a unique dynamic that we really don't see in horror games. And that is going for a short-term gain, as in, I killed a zombie, we don't have to worry about him anymore, versus a long-term nightmare that I'm going to stop him now, but he's going to come back in 5 to 10 minutes, and now this area is going to be even more dangerous. But maybe I'll have resources at that point to possibly get around him. Maybe I won't. And then I'm going to be in an even worse spot. So I'm going to fast forward ahead here. If I do this just right, let's see. Here we go. You're going to see a zombie get up. So you can see his feet down there, and as I walk, he looks all calm and peaceful. Oh, there he goes. Now that body right there that you just saw, that is a scripted event. He's always going to get up once you've gotten the condition to solve this puzzle. But if I had the layer fluid on hand beforehand, I could have ended him. Now I'm going to fast forward a little bit more, see if we can watch me do like a running of the bulls. Alright. Did I go? No, I just ran the hell out of there. I wasn't going to deal with him. Which is kind of the smart play. I'm going to fast forward a little bit more ahead and just let the footage roll while I continue my talking. But with the Crimson Head zombies, they become essentially a unique class of enemies in Resident Evil 1 Remastered. And this is very similar, and there's the layer fluid and the kerosene in my inventory right there. But they become a higher class that you have to deal with. But more importantly, they can't be dealt with as easily compared to the other enemies. Now, eventually in Resident Evil 1, you'll get your hands on the Magnum and the grenade launcher, and that will kind of downplay it. But you're always going to be in a resource war with the enemies in the game. So my regular handgun becomes a temporary solution, because I don't want to use that on a Crimson Head zombie, much less stuff like the hunters and the various bosses in the game. So the handgun, I can use it for some case, but I know at some point I'm going to need a shotgun, or I'm going to need a grenade launcher, or use my precious layer fluid. And in this case, it creates a new demand on my ammo or on my resources. And we really don't see that all that much. Now in Alien Isolation, they went even further with having that second tier of enemy, with the alien being outright unkillable. You can't stop it. And that creates its own unique dynamic that we'll have to talk about at a later time. I'm going to fast forward a little bit to see, oh, wait a minute, I just burned a body right there. Good for me. Let's see if we can get that footage right there. And, oh, wait, this is a perfect time to pause. The Crimson Heads also create a dynamic with the enemies, or with the layout itself. If you look on this map here, you'll notice that several areas, such as right here, have different ways of getting around. And in the original Resident Evil, the shortcuts were just simply there to give you a quicker way around the mansion. In the remastered version, they take a whole new meaning by the fact that you can use this as a way of judging how do I get around the mansion if I know there are Crimson Heads waiting for me. I can take a shorter route that's more direct, but could have a Crimson Head waiting for me because I killed that body, or like I just burned him down so I can avoid him. Or do I take a longer route with more regular zombies, but I run the risk of either using a defense item or getting killed or taking more damage that way. And not only that, but zombies can also spawn due to scripted events, such as them breaking through windows or even walking through the doors, which that can freak you out the first time that happens. I'm sure there's a guy waiting for me down there as well. But let's get back to normal size, Josh, and we'll kind of wrap things up for today's piece. When it comes to creating horror and balancing out with combat, the best solutions that we've seen in terms of providing both fight or flight is to have that second dimension in terms of enemies. Have those guys that can't be easily killed or can't be killed at all, and allow them to be an additional resource drain in the game. More importantly, you can use them as a way of justifying resource management and having those stronger weapons. Now, on the other hand, this will encourage some slight hoarding, as you typically don't want to use a shotgun or a magnum on a normal zombie in Resident Evil. You want to say that for the hunters, the Crimson Heads, and the bosses. But when the player knows that things can certainly get worse, and they can't actually know what's going to happen in the future, that will generate some very unique tension and terror as they notice, oh my god, I don't have any more shotgun shells, and I left 3 bodies in the room I'm about to go into. What am I going to do? The important point is that ammo should be plentiful, but it should never be just full-on Rambo. One of the issues Alan Wake ran into, not only not having a lot of enemy diversity, was the fact that they just got to the point where it's just like, here, take all the flare guns and shotguns and explosives and flashbangs that you need and go to town. And there are many areas in Alan Wake that turn into arena or horde battles. And that's what you don't want in a game that's supposed to be built around horror. Because nothing kills horror than just spending the last 10 minutes killing every enemy type in your game in an enclosed surrounding. Now, to wrap things up, for those of you watching this, besides some examples we've talked about and those that are mentioned in the posts, can you think of horror games that did interesting things with their enemy designs to force the player out of their comfort zone, or to make combat more engaging and terrifying compared to just having a tier 1 enemy or a boss class, and that's it? Let me know in the comments below, but thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to suggest a topic for me to look at in the future, please don't hesitate to get in touch or leave a comment down below. But thanks for watching today's Critical Thought. Tune in next time for another great discussion here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Before we get to the credits, just a quick shout out to the supporters over on patreon.com/gwbicer. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to check back for our regular streaming, most nights at 9:30, 10 EST, and you'll find a schedule link down below. For a collection of my writings as well as audio casts on design, you'll find that at game-wisdom.com. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at gwbicer. If you're interested in hanging out and talking about game design topics, we have a Discord channel with the basic tier open to everybody, and that is linked down below as well. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, it is at patreon.com/gwbicer. Your support can help to keep things going and growing, and you can earn rewards such as ad-free versions of our talks, votings for our specific Let's Plays and grab bag streams, and more. But that's it for now. Thanks again for watching. I hope you come back for more great discussions on design here and on GameWisdom.com, where we examine the art and science of games.